So this is on to the next thing. This is another one of these funny memes I saw. This is not cute and kinky memes from October 22nd. So it says, does giving a blowjob help in reducing bad breath? And it's supposedly a girl's writing this. My boyfriend told me I have bad breath when I wake up. He told me that giving me a blowjob early in the morning will help me to reduce my bad breath. Now I give him a blowjob daily in the morning, and he tells me I don't have bad breath after the blowjob. Is he right?
Oh,
Somebody give this man a medal. It's kind of genius when you think about it. It's like, babe, it totally cured you of your bad breath.
Well, like it scrapes the tongue, it cleans it.
So this is funny. Everybody saw this famous picture of Trump. He had his fist in the air saying fight, fight, fight after he got shot on the first assassination attempt. And so somebody modified it, put smiles on the faces of the Secret Service guys, and he's holding a bag of McDonald's after his McDonald's thing.
He does like his McDonald's.
That's pretty funny.
Funny. It's actually
He
just ketchup on
loves
his
McDonald's. He absolutely
Well,
does.
remember, like when the thing happened, they're like, "Oh, it's just a hoax." That's just ketchup on his.
Yeah, that was another thing. People in the media entertaining people saying that shit. It's like,
well, it's like like the Trump assassination. That's a conspiracy theory. The Juicy Smollett thing. Oh, that's not a conspiracy theory. It's like things that benefit them. It's never a conspiracy theory. That's what happened. But whatever goes against what they're saying, it's always a conspiracy theory. Like that name is just thrown out. Like there was an article from like NBC like in 2023 like, oh, this right-wing Republican conspiracy theory to not have Joe Biden on the ballot. Well, look what fucking happened. He's not on the ballot. But everything's called a conspiracy theory just to dismiss it immediately.
It's amazing the amount of conspiracy theories that have come true.
Yeah,
What's nutty is I remember probably 2007, I think 2008 was the first time I'd ever seen Alex Jones. I remember watching some of his stuff, and some of it you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I can see that. And the other stuff you're like, oh man, that's so fucking far out there. And now, 17, 18 years later, I look at what the things that he said, and I go, man, his track record is way better than the mainstream media. All these things that sounded, like the stuff about...
Oh, the spider goats?
Well, just the stuff about the elite and that they're Satanists and they all go to this island and they get blackmailed and the politicians get blackmailed. And then you see what happened with, the guy who didn't hang himself and his little island. And then now all the Diddy stuff. And everybody went there. Obama everybody was at the Diddy parties. Everybody was at the guy's parties who didn't hang himself. And apparently there were cameras everywhere and all stuff was filmed. And so it was a blackmail operation run by dirty cops and the CIA and other intelligence agencies. And it's just nuts how all this stuff, now you see it and you go, hey, it's just the stuff that I thought sounded crazy 17, 18 years ago and absurd. Now it's like, it's kind of common knowledge.
Well, he's talking about
it wasn't a conspiracy after all. It was just what was going on.
Like when I say spider goat, Jade's face like lit up. You're like, what the fuck's a spider goat?
What is a
spider goat? But he was like saying like there was like genetically he was talking about like genetic modification. They spliced like spider DNA with goats so they can make silk out of their milk. Now if you look it up, there's like articles from Johns Hopkins 10 years like it's all actually real. Like they were doing this 25 years ago, 30 years ago. And then you can look up the actual medical, like if you go to like Johns Hopkins, they have like the whole trials and explain. It's just known. But when you hear him first say that, you're like, okay, this guy's a fucking nut. Or like he's turning the frogs gay. It's like the atrazine in the water was actually turning the frogs gay. The polluting in the water.
What was causing them their sex to change?
Yeah, it was turning them gay.
Chemicals were.
But you first hear that, and that's one thing they used really against him to sound, oh, he's just ridiculous. But then it's like 10 years later, you're like, oh shit, this is actually happening. And do you know where like linguistically, where conspiracy theory came, like the term conspiracy theory came into like linguistically?
Where?
The 1960s, it started being used by the CIA
to
discredit things. Right. That's the first time it was ever really used in the language.
Yeah, it was the Kennedy assassination when they started using that. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. So this was actually a letter that Elon Musk wrote that was kind of describing our relationship with the government and the rules that the government has for us. And so the first one is, you are not to make any money without telling me. You are not to leave my property without permission. You will pay me a large percentage of your income or get locked in the cage. You will not own anything I don't approve of or get locked in the cage. If you do not pay me, you will get locked in the cage. If you trade, you can only do it with my permission slips unless I've given you permission. Trading with other kinds of currency could land you in the cage. If you get a job, your employer will owe me more money. If you want to have friends come over from another place, they'll have to get in line, maybe for years. Let's talk about immigration, obviously, legal immigration. You will let me listen in on your phone calls, texts, emails, or any other communications. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. I mean, that's the Patriot Act. I will take your money as I see fit and spend it how I want. My friends will get a cut. Obviously referring to the politicians. If you complain about my behavior, murder, theft, kidnapping, debt, it's a sign you don't love me. My friends will tell you to move to Somalia.
Kind of weird.
He says the XOXO, the federal government of the United States. He says that part wasn't there. So we were talking. One of the things we were talking about yesterday was our shipbuilding capacity and tariffs, and how the Chinese, when you look at the Chinese Communist Party and some of their leaders, and who look at what happened, especially in World War II, the rape of Nanking and all that stuff. Their 100 years of humiliation now will be 100 years of glory. Is that what they say? 100 years of glory. And so this is a missile component factory. And so one of the things that the Ukrainian war has exposed, like just one example I can think of off the top of my head, is artillery shells. And so back in the 1990s, we had the industrial capacity to manufacture about 980,000 rounds a month. And that's of 155 millimeter, which is our standard, most widely used artillery shell, along with all of our allies. And so when the Ukrainian war broke out, we had reduced our manufacturing capacity over the last 30 years to where we were cranking out 14,000 a month.
That's it?
Yes.
Wow.
And so
percent.
easily, the Ukrainians could be using 1 million rounds a month in combat. And so when you think about the fact that we used to be able to make we were making close to 1 million or 155 millimeter rounds per month in the 90s. When the Ukrainian war started 3 years ago, our capacity had been reduced all the way down to 14,000 shells a month.
Like 1.5% basically.
So in the one of the bills a couple of years ago, they allocated $6 billion to build I think it was in Texas, a new plant to make 155 millimeter shells. And so the last I checked, we're now, after 3 years of war, I think by sometime early 2025, mid 2025, we should be back up to, I think, about 120,000 rounds a month. Last I heard, we're currently cranking out with our existing plants about 80,000 rounds a month.
Yeah.
And normal combat operations, just of our military, easily 1 to 2 million rounds a month. We have stockpiles, but us, the Koreans, the Europeans, everybody's been given, and that's part of the bottlenecks. The thing that wins wars is logistics, being able to make enough weapons to replenish what you're using. Because if your enemy can make more artillery shells or rockets or bombs or jets or whatever faster than you can, you're going to lose the war just because.
Yeah, like you're a great example.
Numerical.
Hitler in Germany.
Well, the Liberty ships, which was and you can pull us up in post and put some pictures and videos. We built these Liberty ships, and we were building these things in days. These are freighters, basically, that would ship bombs, material, food, supplies to Europe and the rest of our allies around the world during World War II. And, the German U-boats, which were the submarines, basically, that were sinking or trying to sink, what we were sending overseas to prevent us from, because again, wars are won by logistics. If they could reduce our fleet of ships and send them to the bottom faster than we could build them, then they could win the war. But at some point in the war, we were making these Liberty ships faster than the U-boats could sink them. And supposedly, when Hitler saw that data, he said, "Oh, we've lost the war." He knew it was over.
Yeah.
He knew that because they knew what their capacity was to build new U-boats, and as the war went on, especially the last 2 years, we and the British got really good at finding them and sinking them. So their capacity to sink ships was falling off a cliff. And so that's what wins wars. And so when you look at the fact that now, I was just reading an article the other day, the goal for the U.S. Navy is to get to 355 combat ships, ships in its arsenal. And right now we're barely able to field about 300, and our shipbuilding capacity has shrunk so much because the Chinese government has subsidized their shipbuilding industry to basically put ours out of business over the last 30, 40 years, which they've been successful at. So from a logistical standpoint, if you want to win and dominate your adversary, you want to haul out their steel industry, their shipbuilding industry, their manufacturing industries, because if you ever get in a shooting war with them, they cannot make missiles and bombs and ships faster than you can. And you can overwhelm them by having a superior logistical chain. I mean, we were known as the arsenal of democracy back during World War II because we were Saudi Arabia back then. And we're shipping more oil than any other country in the world again. But we don't have the industrial capacity because the corporate fascists, if you will, that have been running our big corporations have basically been getting rich by sending our industrial base over to China and other places, while our steel industry withers. Like the Chinese government was basically subsidizing their steel industry so they could make steel cheaper and send their steel over the United States because there was no tariffs, and basically sell their steel, their Chinese steel, cheaper than American steel. So what happened over the decades is our steel mills closed and they went out of business because they couldn't compete, because they were being subsidized by the government. And that wasn't a business thing that was done. That was a strategic and a military thing that was done, which on the Chinese part was brilliant. And so now our Navy is decommissioning ships faster than we can build them because we don't have the shipbuilding capacity anymore. The Chinese have the largest shipbuilding capacity in the world, and they're building a really big Navy. And the only reason a country, when you look at history, builds a big Navy or a big military is because they intend on using it. So at some point, they're going to have numerical superiority in the Navy. And if you look at how they're behaving in the Philippines, how they're behaving in the areas near Japan, it's pretty clear they want to dominate that whole area. And when they have the ships to do it, we're not going to be able to do anything about it. And so this video is a video from a factory in China that makes components for missiles. And the captions, this is from Visegrad from October 22nd. And so the Chinese claim that this cruise missile factory can produce over 1,000 missile components per day working in 3 ships. And so if you could build missiles fast, and that's the other thing, a lot of these missiles, like the HIMARS missiles that we've given to the Ukrainians, we don't have, right now, it's going to take, at our current output, 8 to 10 years to replace what we've given them and what they've used. Plus, we have lots of orders because everybody wants the HIMARS missile system, and we have, just making the rocket motors is something that we don't have the capacity right now to handle the demand. So if if your enemy or your adversary can produce missiles and bombs quicker than you can, you will lose a shooting war eventually. It's a numerical certainty. And so this is this video of this particular
CCTV recently released a short clip revealing China cruise missile and anti-ship missiles engine components automated production line. This is only one part of factory automated facilities. China has significantly upgraded missile manufacture process technologies and produces most advanced cruise missiles and anti-ship missiles. As shown in the video, there is very little human labor involved in the production lines. The daily output of this factory, reportedly, is over 1,000 missiles if it operates 24 hours a day. Such efficient production lines are to reduce the cost of missiles considerably, and ensure to be able to meet a demand during a wartime. It will also supply enough to meet ever-increasing demand for missiles in the international markets.
So with the excess, if you have I mean, just look at what's happened with Israel and what's happened with Hezbollah and even the Iranians is you launch enough numbers of missiles and rockets at one time, you're going to overwhelm the air defenses. So you'll shoot more missiles than the air defenses are capable of shooting down at one time.
Yeah.
So you cause your adversary to use up their stockpile of missiles they do have, and enough of your missiles are going to get through to where you can destroy targets that you need to destroy in order to win.
Mr. Huang Ruosong's model development history. That is basically a history of the development of China's anti-ship and cruise missiles. Starting from the upstream, 1. China's first type of anti-ship missile. The models he worked on covered short range, medium range, and long range, which covered launch platforms from shore to ship, air to air, and air to ground missiles. The speed of missiles includes subsonic speed, high subsonic speed, supersonic speed, and hypersonic speed.
My dream is, the sky allows me however to fly. The ocean allows me however to sail. My experience from decades working on missiles taught me to stick to my ideals and dreams. We must persist in self-reliance, work hard, and take the path of continuous innovation. I'm still striving.
So when you build something like this, you plan on using that military. You're not just building it for show. You're building it to impose your will on the world.
Regarding the development of cruise missiles and anti-ship missiles, I summarize them as modernizations in 10 aspects covering systems, full area, information, networking, integration, intelligence, precision, stealth, unmanned, and clusters. After decades, based on the basic serialization we explored for a new generation, pre-researched for a new generation, developed a new generation, and then finally produced a new generation of missiles.